Thanks for joining us today for The Green Room on Radio Kansas. We're lucky enough to have Yaniv Segal from the Salina Symphony here to chat about their upcoming concerts. More than a concert, really. This is an experience. Thanks for joining us.
That's right. Thanks for having me.
We are talking about a concert entitled, well, it's got a couple titles and subtitles. It's Meditation is the primary title.
Yep. So when I started my tenure 4 years ago, I really wanted to do some concerts in the Theater Salina space. They have a really great black box, and so they've been allowing us to put on a performance there every year. So we affectionately call that concert series Out of the Box, which is, of course, in the box. And on that concert series, we can introduce types of music that you don't maybe normally hear in a symphony hall, or things that are a little more edgy, a little bit more contemporary, might make you think a little bit, generally for small ensemble that we can fit in there. And so this year, it's called Meditate. And the impetus for this is kind of the question, what is music? Because that is a big question for a lot of musicians, I think, a lot of people, a lot of artists. What qualifies something as art? And especially in the last century, there was a movement towards defining art as anything that's being defined as art. You got Andy Warhol and the pop artists. You've got Dadaists. You've got Surrealists, kind of stretching the imagination of what is visual art. And then the counterpart. There we go. The counterpart with counterpoint would be would be in the music world, where people like John Cage was really pushing the boundary of what could be considered music. And so we're presenting a concert of music by John Cage and by another really influential composer, Terry Riley, who wrote a piece called In C. And we're going to explore at what point does organized sound become music. The works of John Cage that I've selected are quite different. We have one, Dreams, which exists in many different formats, but is a notated work where John Cage is following kind of conventions of traditional music. Then we have a piece called Five, which is when he starts to completely remove the idea of bar lines, and notes have to appear in a certain time, and the musicians are only governed by a clock and their own decision when to play that note within a certain time frame. And then we have his seminal piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which some people consider a musical joke because the sheet music indicates that the performer is to perform it tacit. In other words, not to play anything at all. And so the defined performance simply becomes that time. And you discover through a performance, as you're listening, that there's sound all around us all the time that our brains tend to filter out so that we can function. And John Cage says, well, take a moment and listen. And when you realize nature and mechanical things and your own body noises and who knows what, the phone ringing, the radio going on, the train horn, all of these things combine in ways to make our experience of life interesting, 3D, and could be considered music. So that's the John Cage side.
Have you conducted that piece previously?
I have performed Five as a member of an ensemble, and I have performed 4 minutes and 33 seconds as a solo work. And I have not done it as a group work.
Okay.
And that is, it's a really fascinating piece. I think it's going to be, I haven't done it in a number of years, and I think these days it is so hard to disconnect from our devices and from the idea that it's okay to sit back for a minute, just listen, just stop and listen. And I think Cage said that it's a type of piece that we should all perform several times a day. And I really like that idea. And well, I'll say one thing that's interesting about performing it is that there are three movements. And you would think, but it's just three movements of silence. But as a performer, you still make a choice about when one movement ends and when you kind of relax. And then again, the next movement begins and you get into performance mode. So there's a little choreography involved so that the audience
Hmm.
kind of also knows that there are three movements. And the tension is released for a moment, and then you start listening again. And in each subsequent movement, you're listening differently.
Well, we have a couple of selections by John Cage to feature this new hour. I was surprised at how early he was composing.
Yeah.
I mean, his dates are 1912 to 1992. But this piece that we'll feature here is a harp solo. At least it's rendered here as a harp solo, composed in 1928. It's called "In a Landscape," music by John Cage, whose further works you can hear at the Salina Symphony's upcoming performance. A harpist named Katie Kirkpatrick. And that is not a selection from Night Crossings, although maybe it ought to be. It is music by John Cage, composed in 1928. He's described as an Los Angeles innovator and musical philosopher in the literature here. Does that some? How would you describe him, Yaniv Segal of the Salina Symphony?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, he inspired a lot of thought, and also he crafted his works with attention and detail. So yeah, musical innovator. I like that.
So not to make to skip across the music of Cage, but you're also doing In C by Terry Riley, right?
This is a
Now,
seminal work.
yeah, I was gonna say
This
this is
is
a big one.
this is a big one. It's kind of the intersection between the experimentation period of music and what is now morphed into minimalism. Uh, the perhaps the most famous minimalist that people know is Philip Glass, but there's a whole New York school like Steve Reich, and Terry Riley's In C is one of these early pieces. It's hard to describe exactly what it is. The music is written as 53 melodic cells, and then we're given instructions. And the instructions are you play these cells, you repeat them as many times as you want until you decide to move on. And the only limiting element is that you shouldn't get more than one or two or ahead or one or two behind where everybody else is. So depending on how fast or slowly you decide to progress through the piece, a performance can take 20 minutes or it could take an hour and a half. And there's a pulse in the key of C throughout that we're all like really kind of like a mantra going on in the background. Musicians are invited to play what they want. They're invited to improvise should they choose to improvise. They're invited to lay out. If something doesn't fit their instrument, they don't have to play it. So it's not a type of piece that you listen to and go home and sing, but it's a type of piece that transports you into another world entirely. And that's where the title for the concert, Meditate, comes from. Because the only way you can listen to this is just by like letting go and letting yourself hear as the work evolves, and you get to evolve with it. I have performed it a couple times as well. One memorable performance was in Central Park at the Central Park Bandshell in like on Earth Day performance, and that performance. I mean, I don't know exactly how long it lasted, but maybe 35 minutes. And I'm going to remember that one because in the front of the audience, a woman leaped to her feet after we were done and gave us a standing ovation, and it was actually Yoko Ono. So we were right up her alley, and it's an experience to hear this piece. So what we're going to do in our Salina Symphony concert is on the end of the first half, after we do the John Cage, we're going to do a little demonstration of how the piece works. Just a couple of cells, just to so people understand how to listen and how to chill out. And then the second half of the concert is actually going to take place out in the atrium of Theater Salina. Musicians will be placed all around. There's going to be some seating downstairs. People can be invited to walk around. Musicians can be invited to walk around. It's really about the experience of this work and kind of getting at that question of what is music.
Well, one of the pieces you can experience is called Dream, and it is rendered by various instruments, and at least one occasion rendered by a solo instrument. And the example we'll hear is from a collection called A Crazy Quilt of American Piano Music, music by John Cage, and it's performed by Leo Schmidt. Music by John Cage, a solo piano version of Dream. It's one of the pieces you can hear this coming weekend on a concert given by the Salina Symphony in the Black Box Theater. Is that the
Yes,
proper name?
at Theater Salina, they have two great spaces for performances, and the smaller one is their Sunflower Theater. I love that space. It's a black box, yeah.
Ah, and there are no fewer than three works on the program by John Cage, two of which you can hear and one of which you simply have to experience.
That's a great way of putting it. And I think that really hits this concert like on the nail. It's something you have to experience.
Well, as I told you before we ever hit the air, I said this is going to be one of the most memorable concerts any attendee has ever taken part in. And it's an extraordinary bill. Three pieces by John Cage. Terry Riley's In C, which you heard Yaniv Segal tell us about a few minutes ago. And tickets, as always, salinasymphony.org.
Yep.
Do not buy them out of the back of a station wagon somewhere. Make sure you get the real deal with the special holographic stamp. No, I'm just
I think
kidding.
John Cage would appreciate that, though.
I think he would. Well, Yaniv, thanks for being with us. You'll need to come back next week and tell us about other upcoming concerts.
Yep.
It is a busy season for you, and we wish you the very, very best. Thanks
Sounds
for being
good.
with us.
Thank you. Ciao.
All right.